currently behind the wheel of our 2017 Nissan Navara SL. This is a vehicle that we bought and we own, and it's got about 40,000 Ks on it at the moment. All that time, it's pretty much been doing what I'm doing now. Driving around town, nothing too exciting, commutes, daily errands, runs to the tip, that sort of thing. Four-wheel drive ute is capable of so much more than that though. It can go off-road, it can take you camping, it can take you fishing, it can do all sorts of awesome stuff on top of your daily duties. So I'm going to steal this thing from some of the guys at CarAdvice and we're going to start doing some really cool off-road stuff with it. But first, we're going to do a few modifications too to make sure that it's really up to the job of heading off-road. We're heading to Heisman Steering in Sydenham to install this new gear to the Navara, which should give us a good improvement in off-road capability. Heisman's is a well-known workshop that has built a great reputation for four-wheel drive modifications over the years. They also do a lot of work importing and tuning Bilstein shocks for Australian conditions across all sorts of different vehicles. So I reckon it's pretty safe to say they know what they're doing. So this is the stuff that Tyler's pulled out of the back of the Navara. This is the OE gear. As you can see, the Navaras with the coil springs have had a habit of sagging down a little bit, being a little bit too soft in the rear. Now we solved that with this spring, which is a stronger spring, it's got a higher spring rate, and it will bring the car up 2 inches as well. And it's got a progressive nature about it. You can see here, they're a bit tighter here, and those winds actually come out a little bit. So that's a progressive spring rate. And we're changing the shocks as part of the kit. So as you can see, this thing's a bit taller. These are a really quality shock as well, so it'll be better damping, more oil inside, a bigger piston, all those good things that we want. And what we're also doing with these rear springs is we're fitting a poly-air airbag. So this is a bag that sits in the coil itself. It's going to be an air hose running to it. And what you can do is adjust how much pressure through an air compressor or whatever is in this bag, and that will adjust the spring rate. So say a ute like this, typically you're going to be riding around unladen, you don't want a really stiff ride in the rear. You can take the pressure out of this, but then when you are loaded up, you're towing, you're doing some hard work, you can punch a few PSI into this thing and that will actually level the car out, it'll correct the spring rate for you. So you've got a bit of nice adjustability there. So Tyler's assembled these struts and they're going into the front of the car now. So why are we going to all the effort of doing this? Pretty much this stuff will make the vehicle a bit better off-road. Taller spring, that's going to give you a bit more ground clearance, but also there's a tapered design, so it's not going to ride really rough on-road. There's a better shock in there as well. That's a Bilstein shock. That's going to give you better damping, better resistance to fade. So all in all, this will be a better vehicle off-road at the end of the day. So part of this suspension upgrade will also be the wheels and tyres on this Navara along with the suspension. And just to show you, this is actually the spare that came on the Navara originally off the showroom floor. This is just an OE Toyo tyre. Not a lot of tread depth there. You can see the tread blocks are quite close together, not much room in between. This is not that good a tyre off-road and probably not that good a tyre on-road as well, especially in the wet. So when we got this Navara, straight away, we went to these Bridgestone Jeweller all-terrains. Now that's a big improvement, pretty much the same size as these ones. A little bit more aggressive for off-road work. You can see the voids are a little bit bigger, but still a nice on-road tyre. and they're a bit more reliable. LT construction, those sorts of things, that's good. But while we're doing suspension, we're also going to do wheels and tyres. So we're going to go with something new and better off-road. These bad boys. This is a Toyo RT rugged terrain tyre. So this is a bit of a hybrid between an all-terrain and a mud terrain. So if you have a look here, big gaps between the tread blocks, which are actually quite deep in themselves. In the middle here, they tighten up a little bit, so you get a nice sort of on-road drive, a bit like an all-terrain, but then a bit of mud terrain performance here. Look at these side biters. That's really good for off-road driving. Now this is a bit of a stronger tyre as well in terms of the construction, a bit more like a mud terrain. So this thing will put up with punctures a lot better. This thing will put up with getting aired down a lot better. Just general abuse that you get when you're driving off-road. Bigger tyre as well these are, so if you have a look at that. Big gain in ground clearance, tyre diameter, heaps better for off-road. So when you combine the tyres with the suspension, there's about a 50mm suspension lift in there at the moment, and these tyres are about a 50mm diameter increase over stock. That gives you 25mm because you only get half of the tyre increase, obviously, for ground clearance. 75mm total, and that's the maximum of what you get before you need engineering. So this is sort of the best improvement you can get before you start going really crazy.
Rather than me explaining why upgrading suspension might be a good idea for your four-wheel drive, I'll let someone who really knows what they're talking about do the hard work. This is Andre Nader from the Bilstein workshop.
So typically we could have someone with a four-wheel drive of sorts that has a GVM upgrade and the car is towing up to 3 ton, for example. An off-the-shelf shock is not going to be able to handle those kind of loads, so we can take that shock absorber, completely disassemble it, change the internals, the shims that you can see just here, and using those we can manipulate the forces in the shock to be able to handle those loads while still providing a certain degree of comfort. Our point of difference is we're not just a sales department. We don't just have off-the-shelf stock. We have a completely functioning workshop with a team of engineers, and we can do anything from completely custom builds from the ground up to suit a particular vehicle or a custom race car, for example, and like I said, all the way up to off-the-shelf product.
The truth is that a stock four-wheel drive is probably much more capable than many people give them credit for. The first things you will run out of is probably ground clearance and grip from the tyres. Now that we've improved both of these items with aftermarket gear, this Navara will be much more capable off-road. And it should be a lot nicer to drive and easier to drive on-road as well.
Alright, so first impressions after coming out of the shop. First thing you definitely notice is the ride height. 75mm might not sound like that much, but it's definitely a noticeable increase. The thing just feels a bit higher from the driver's seat. And you can feel there's a bit more firmness in the suspension as well. That spring rate has definitely increased. But I think the damping is better. There's more control through the shocks, I think, making it feel a bit nicer to drive. It's a bit firmer, but in a good way, I think. These tyres too, these Toyos, they're definitely much more aggressive than the stock offerings. But so far, you can't really tell much difference in terms of noise or the way it's driving. After a bit of time, certainly, maybe 20,000 Ks, they might get a bit noisier, so we'll see how they go when that time comes. But so far, so good. This is a massive improvement over stock. But of course, mods like these aren't made for just driving around town. They're made to make this thing better off-road. So we're going to put these things to the test pretty soon. We've got some really cool trips lined up and some pretty challenging trips as well. So we'll see how much better this Navara is off-road and how well it handles some hard off-road trips, so stay tuned.